Now, the Palestinian Islamist group Hamas, terrorist group, launched its biggest attack on Israel, with Israeli officials reporting around 2,500 rockets fired from Gaza, as well as sending fighters across the border. Hamas militants unexpectedly stormed into southern towns across the region. It was on a Jewish holiday. Residents were urged to stay close to bomb shelters. Across the globe, we've seen scenes of solidarity for Israel. There we are in New York, the Empire State Building, condemning the attacks across the south of the country. We've seen images there. We've got the European Commission lighting up with the flag of Israel. We also saw in Berlin as well, and other countries around the world. There we are in Berlin. But sadly, elsewhere, videos have emerged and they're appearing to show people in various parts of London, flags flying, clapping in celebration for what has happened. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, now she says that she expects the police to use the full force of the law against displays of support for Hamas. Joining me now is former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram MBE. Philip, we see a sharp, thank you for joining me. We see a sharp contrast between celebrations that unfortunately we have seen in parts of Europe and also London, and the signs of solidarity that have been shown by, as I showed you there, in New York, in the European Commission too, in Berlin and many other cities and countries.
We have, and there's so many naive people who are trying to suggest that what Hamas is doing is not terrorism. It is not. They terrorize their own people in Gaza, and they're carrying out terrorist acts into Israel. You do not go and kidnap civilians, rape women and children, and attack into a country if you have got some form of cause. And those that are waving Palestinian flags and supporting it, the Terrorism Act brought Hamas in as an illegal organisation in November 2021. And under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act 2000, anyone who supports a prescribed organisation could be subject to prosecution under that act. So these individuals that are waving flags, that are shouting pro-Hamas commentary and everything else, are potentially committing an offence under that act, and that could have them locked away for up to 14 years.
So do you think various parties, including media outlets, are too cautious of calling Hamas a terrorist organisation, using the term militants instead?
Well, I do, because the law is quite clear. The UK has prescribed it and described it as a terrorist organisation. It's on the statute books as a terrorist organisation. The EU has it prescribed as a terrorist organisation, and it's on the EU statute books as a terrorist organisation, as does the United States. So, I think we should stop beating around the bush and trying to be all PC with this. Describe Hamas exactly as they are. They are a bunch of terrorists, and those that are in Gaza get terrorised by Hamas to keep in line and to follow the cause, in the same way that other terrorist organisations that we know of have terrorised their local communities to try and maintain some level of support. They do it through the clues in the title of the organisation. They do it through terror. They don't do it through democracy or through cooperation.
Philip, how concerned are you that this foreign conflict plays out on, we've seen these celebrations, but plays out further in terms of protests, but potentially violence in other countries around the world, of course, close to Israel, but also in the West?
Well, I can see it causing increased polarisation, and this fits with what a lot of other international leaders would like to see, because it'll create problems and create conflict. Vladimir Putin will be rubbing his hands in glee when he sees flags being waved in London. He'll be rubbing his hands in glee whenever he sees Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland putting out posts with the Palestinian flag as part of that, because he will be exploiting that in the information battle that's going on from his global perspective, as will lots of others. And this is where we have to recognise that there is an international aspect from an information perspective that's going on here. In a year running up to US presidential elections, UK parliamentary elections, and other elections around the world, and it will be exploited.
Many will be relieved to see that both the Prime Minister in this country and the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer, have come out very strongly in solidarity with Israel and defend their right to defend themselves. It's hard to overstate the barbarity that we've seen. Lots of footage, some unverified, some verified, that we've seen of the barbarity of the Hamas terrorist group. In terms of looking to Israel and their response to this, but also in terms of this attack and the intelligence, people are calling this a colossal lack of intelligence, colossal lack from the Israeli security services to know that this was going to happen. Not a surprise, a shock attack.
Well, yes, and there'll be a lot of questions to be answered by Israeli intelligence. Now, Israeli intelligence, you gather huge volumes of information. And it's clear what Hamas have done here, probably helped by external influences. I've got some information to suggest that, but it hasn't been verified as yet. They've done something that you describe as below the threshold, hidden in the noise of all the information that's going on. So it's very difficult to pick out and see. We expect our intelligence organizations to have 2020 foresight, to be able to look into the future and predict exactly what's going to happen. And then we criticize them when something has happened, and we've got the lens of 2020 hindsight to say, hey, you failed in a massive way. Lessons have to be learned. If intelligence agencies could predict what was going to happen in the future, then there'd be no intelligence officers. We'd have all won the national lottery every week as to what's going on. It's a very difficult game. I'm being slightly flippant here in a very serious and shocking act, but it's too easy to blame intelligence failures. Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the Russian GRU will have been examining what Israeli intelligence is gathering. They've been looking at how they can try and mask their activities in the preparation and planning for this, and they've clearly brought that into what's going on. They've brought a level of sophistication we haven't seen before.
And just lastly, it sounds like a silly question almost, but what are Hamas and also Hezbollah now on the northern border, their motivation here?
Well, Hamas's motivation is to try and embarrass Israel, and what their wider objective is, I don't know, because they don't have the military capability to achieve it, and they know that Israel will come back and hit them hard. So what they could be trying to do is create greater regional instability by bringing in, as you said, Hezbollah, and we've got some reports on the northern border with Lebanon, bring in Iran and create greater Middle East instability. That's what Vladimir Putin would like, to try and take international focus away from what's going on inside Ukraine and give him a chance to try and recover a little bit. So, I think we could be seeing more of an international playbook here that's happening, and potential for more destabilization in different countries around the world. And of course, we've seen the borders between Serbia and Kosovo. We're seeing what the remnants of Wagner are doing with in Central Africa, with destabilization and coups that are happening there. I think we're in for a very unstable time over the next year.
Yes, and of course this will be a setback, no doubt, for Israeli-Arab rapprochement in any case. Thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram, MBE, there for us, former senior military intelligence officer. Very interesting indeed.